the greatest accomplishments I've ever had have been on the other side of injury, pregnancy, and diagnosis. Every single incredible thing I've accomplished has been on the other side of the three greatest setbacks I faced as an adult. And so that's just to say, sometimes slow and steady works. And sometimes as you gain confidence and strength, your capability does expand.
I've followed Shelby Copeland for a long time, watching her swinging, jumping, doing amazing things requiring great strength, and thought how lucky she was to have a body that works so well. But I remember the day when I read a frank post from her about what brought her to that point, and in particular about her journey with hypermobility, like me. It amazed me that she was able to do the things she could, and I instantly reached out to her, not thinking that if she can, maybe I can, but rather look at what a great example she is and how important it is that she shares her journey. So I'm really pleased to get to talk to her properly about natural movement and so much more today on the Make Movement Matter podcast. We started on our common ground, natural movement, and I asked her what she feels the benefits of training in this way are, and particularly the benefits she sees for the clients that she works with.
Yeah. So natural movement, I think, is just such a wonderful fitness modality because it's so practical. So many of the movement patterns are things that we've all done at some point in our life, whether it was crawling, hopefully we crawled.
I didn't.
You didn't?
No.
Oh, so
Just
interesting.
sorry to interject straight away, but I
Yeah.
didn't. I bum shuffled. So I missed the crawling stage, and I've always wondered
Interesting.
if that had something to do with my back and so on issues,
Oh.
and missing that developmental step. But who knows? Continue.
Yes, and you're not alone. Some folks did
Yes.
skip crawling, and there's some theories about how that looks down the road.
Yeah.
But so maybe crawling isn't the best example, but the things we did as children, hanging from trees or monkey bars, jumping without giving it a second thought, being able to turn, with ease without even thinking about our movements being inhibited in any way. I love how natural movement, it provides an opportunity to reawaken these movement patterns that perhaps were there and we just haven't used it in a while. And it's also a wonderful way to educate and teach new patterns. I just love how it shows up in life in so many ways. So whether it's lifting a cast iron pan out of the oven and doing it in a way that doesn't hurt your wrist, or being able to step over a fallen tree on the path on a hike. So I love the practicality of it. I love how universal it is. There's so many things about natural movement that can be adapted or modified based on injury, ability, strength level. So it really is for everyone. And I love that.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And so who are the sort of typical clients that you work with?
Yeah, I have a very wide range of folks that I work with. In fact, the age range of the people I work with are 0 to 85. So
I love that.
huge age
Wow.
range. Yeah. So on the younger end, I work with children and caregivers in a library setting, and we do something called movement exploration. And we kind of set up an open play area where it provides a lot of different movement opportunities. So crawling, balancing. We have a ring that we set up the kids can
In the
swing from
library.
in the library.
Love that.
And it is very popular. We pack that room with people. And I think people just need like a place, like an open space to take risks and practice different kinds of movements. And I think that,
And
go ahead.
sorry, can I ask, is that the adults with the children at the same time?
That's the idea.
Yeah. Oh, really? But not always the case, I suspect.
Not always the case. And yeah, so caregivers tend to kind of hang back and the kids are kind of in the center. But as we design the space, we really do try to model adults being in the main area as well, and kind of provide opportunities that are appropriate for adults as well, like equipment that's stable enough and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting when you get into a multi-age space, you really need to have modeling happening. So you need an adult out there playing for other adults to come play.
And often adults have become a little bit more embarrassed about movement. They don't want to
Mm.
particularly be the one who is showing what they can and can't do. There's more competition where kids are not in that space at all. They're just go for
Mhm.
it. So I can really see that. And actually, when I was bringing up my kids when they were younger, um, I was at the park and I was sat at the side and I was chatting with
Mhm.
other mums. I wasn't getting involved
Yeah.
and having my journey in finding natural movement, I do regret that. And
Mm.
obviously, I got involved in lots of times in lots of other ways, but there were many times that I now look back and think, I really wish I had. And in fact, I posted a video a year or so ago of me and my, I think about at the time, 15-year-old son, both on a play park, going
Mhm.
around and playing because we both looked a bit kind of the wrong size for the park. And yet we were having a great time. And I think that's the important thing, isn't it? But social norms tend to press on us that, adults don't do that. So it's great that you're trying to
Mhm.
get that, and in a library of all places.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. I think that what you're touching on is something I'm noticing kind of as an emerging theme. Is I think parks and rec departments, libraries, even like just I think there's more interest in like adult play and making space for it. And I think that spaces and environments are becoming more friendly for adults who want to play. So I've noticed some park equipment is a little bit taller, like at middle schools, because it's more appropriate for a bigger person. The library, when they installed their children's section, all the flooring is soft. So they were anticipating,
Yeah.
people playing
Some
there.
impact. Yes.
Yeah. So and I've been noticing just kind of the environment seems to be kind of changing and making more space for movement, which I think is wonderful. Um, but to your point about multi-age play and like what's socially acceptable and what's not, we'll talk about this later. But I host a class called Parkour for Seniors, and it's for adults who are over the age of 50. And we train outside and we train at a park. And one of the most wonderful things about training outside with a group of adults from age 50 to 85 is children watch and they notice and they're really interested in
I bet
adults
they want to get
moving.
involved.
Yes, yeah. We have children who they stand to the side and they kind of model, they kind of mimic what we're doing. Some kids come and challenge us. They offer challenges like do the monkey bars this way,
Yeah.
and and then some kids they ask for like homework. They're like, give me a challenge. So then we come up with like a challenge for them. But it's all because they're watching
Yeah.
um grown-ups be comfortable in this
Yeah.
space and move in this space and be welcome in this space. It's one of the most lovely things about training at parks is the exchange of kind of ideas that happens.
You're reminding me of when I did my second level one, so my recertification of MovNat that we're both certified in. I'm a level one, you're an amazing level three. And I remember we just had people constantly sort of staring at us,
Mm.
moving around in the park, but also coming up and asking. And they were so intrigued to see us all crawling around and balancing and clearly enjoying ourselves, even
Mhm,
though people were being tested. It was still
mhm,
lots of fun. So you could see people's interest. So many people were interested.
mhm,
So um, I'm mainly online, and I would love to do more in person and locally.
mhm,
And hopefully we'll get to that at some point. And that's why I really want to talk to you about the parkour for seniors,
mm.
particularly because that'll be me this year. I'm 50 this year. And
That's
I've never
awesome.
thought of myself as a senior. But anyway,
Yeah, it's a general
mature
term.
woman, whatever. I know. Exactly. Exactly. But I think the huge benefit of that is that, yeah, people see you and they're tempted and they're interested. And by showing other people that you're happy and enjoying yourself,
Yeah.
they want to join in, and that gives them confidence because they
Mhm,
can sort of, it's a bit like if you've never done something before, you kind of want to see it happening first so that you can sort of just assess it and measure it.
mhm,
And so therefore what you're doing in open spaces is clearly having an effect. And given the numbers, as you say, in your library event,
mhm.
word spreads. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's what
yeah,
you want to do. No, that's
absolutely.
superb. Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit. So I've just mentioned MovNat,
Mhm,
and So level 1 is a great place to be for me, and works really well. But to get to level 3, which you are, and quite, I would say there are very few female level 3s,
Mhm.
um, takes a lot of effort, a lot of work, and a lot of strength and skill. And I hope you're very proud of your certification, because it really is an amazing, amazing achievement.
Thank you.
Um, and I've watched you for such a long time doing these crazy things that I see on Instagram. But this isn't the whole story. This isn't
Mhm.
you sort of made in 10 minutes, is it? You've had a story that's brought you into natural movement. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I was a sedentary adult. I never did sports as a kid. I never was interested in movement or sports of any kind. Um, until the age of 25, when one day a friend of mine invited me to go Great Lakes surfing. So we have the big lakes here in the Midwest in the United States, and with wind, you can get waves big enough to surf on fresh water.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, sure, I've never done anything like this. I was very out of shape, but I went and I got so exhausted paddling out on the board. I couldn't even do it. I was
Oh, wow.
just so out
Just
of shape.
getting there, not
Yep.
even
Couldn't
trying.
even couldn't even get out. Yeah, so I like lit a fire in me to like I was unprepared to go do this cool opportunity, this cool thing. I need to get stronger so I'm prepared like if another fun opportunity comes my way. So I don't even know. I think I got like some DVD from the internet about like surfing stronger and I like did the workouts and made a little progress, but it was ultimately through an invitation through a friend to come train at their gym. And I remember I didn't own workout clothes. I had pajamas. I wore pajamas to the gym because I was like, I don't know what you wear to the gym. I'm not gonna go buy something. And I just trained like once or twice a week, and it was my first entry point into fitness, and immediately felt better. Immediately felt a difference in my body. Leading up to that, I had lots of chronic pain, neck issues, pelvic floor pain, and just like feeling very weak and like fatigued often. And it wasn't until I started getting stronger, I'm like, oh, I can feel better. I can, these things are fixable. And
Right.
like pretty quickly, I felt a difference in my body. And I like to the point where I hadn't even realized I was feeling bad. You know what I mean? So all that to say, one thing led to another, and I learned about the sport of ninja. So ninja is an organized sport. If you've ever seen the show American Ninja Warrior,
Oh, yes.
it's kind of like that, but there are local leagues where you can participate in competitions that occur at different ninja gyms throughout the country. So I entered a ninja competition without ever having trained ninja. Didn't even know it was a sport. I signed up for this competition. I was 1 year postpartum. And I was so slow, but I won. I
You
won.
won.
I won my category and I was like, wow,
Oh, my goodness.
cool. And then I just fell in love with ninja. And so ninja incorporates lots of upper body strength. So tons of like monkey bars, swinging, like laches, lots of upper body stuff. So
Running
uh,
up walls and hanging
running
on
up
and pulling
walls.
yourself
So,
up.
yeah.
Yeah, the famous wall. Oh,
Yes, the work wall. Yep. And then lots of kind of weird balance things, like
yeah.
very odd, challenging balance
On
things.
moving things often, and water.
Exactly.
Is it over water, this one, or not? Is there
The
water?
show is over water.
Yes.
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 Yes. So I started training. I kind of became a part of the ninja community here in Madison, Wisconsin. I trained in my friend's ninja basement. You know, it was just like a fun, wild
Wow.
ride. But then pretty quickly it became apparent that I was getting overuse injuries.
Okay.
I started having shoulder issues, and I learned that I just like wasn't strong enough to be doing the things I was doing.
So
Um,
so you, when you won, did you think, oh, I could be quite good at this? Did it give you that sort of sense of, I could do more than this? Especially if I trained, and
Absolutely.
therefore spurred you on. Yeah.
Yes. And you know,
But did you
go
also
ahead.
then have the thought, which I think I probably did until I got personally got injured at 40, I think right up until then, even though there were so many signs, I think I still thought, yeah, of course my body can do that. I've got to
Mm,
work hard, but I'll get there.
mhm,
And, you know, I sort of wasn't taking my body as seriously as I should.
mm. Yeah, well, I think for me, it was unfamiliar territory. I'd never trained before. I'd never been in a sport before. I'd never kind of gone through the process of building strength. And so I think in my mind, I was just trying to get to the goal as quickly as possible and get better,
Right.
to your point.
Yeah.
But I think I just didn't understand a sustainable process to do that. And now in hindsight, if I was my coach, I would have changed so many things about what I did because it's whatever, 10 years past that point. But at the time, I just wanted to get stronger as fast as I could. So I overtrained. And as a hypermobile person, I loaded tissues too quickly that weren't ready to do what I was demanding of them.
And at that point, did you know you were hypermobile?
I did not.
Right.
I did not. So the kind of the next chapter of the story is started training really hard. I have a lot of natural talent. I found out I have amazing natural upper body strength. And as a kid, in hindsight, I'm like, oh, I loved climbing trees. I loved doing like playground pull-ups. I loved anything that was like involving climbing. So I'm like, oh, cool. Maybe I'm just kind of
Made sense.
naturally inclined to loving these things. But yeah, as I started experiencing overuse injury stuff, I started experiencing like systemic chronic pain. And I think my body just like was like,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to send you some signals. Something needs to
Yeah.
change. So lots of soft tissue pain, joint pain. And it got to the point where like I was losing function in like day-to-day activities. Like I remember there was a day I couldn't even lift up my kid out of her crib, out of her bed. I had to call a friend over to get my child out of her bed.
Which
And that's
seeing the things that you do now is almost
yeah.
incomprehensible. It's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like this interesting disconnect in my brain because I was so determined to get better at this sport, but I was losing function in my life. So I would maybe say like borderline obsession is kind of
Mm.
where I was at, and but neglecting the longevity, the care, the wisdom of like movement as a part of my life instead of here's movement, here are my goals, and then here's my life. Like
Yeah.
as I started experiencing injury and pain, I realized, uh-oh, I'm not looking at this correctly. I'm not looking at this in a balanced way. So that's where MovNat enters the picture, actually.
And how did you find out about MovNat? Because um, I'm based in the UK, as you know. It's not a big thing here, and
Mhm.
even natural movement is not that big a thing. But in the US, I believe it is quite a lot bigger. And I came to MovNat through Katie Bowman, and I actually came over to America and did a few days workshop with her before
Oh,
that
cool.
was bolted onto another holiday. It happened to be 3 days before, so I saw it as a sign, and it certainly was. It was pivotal for the rest of my life, um,
Wonderful.
and that opened up the whole world to me. And she actually recommended MovNat to me.
Hmm.
But yeah, so how did you come across MovNat?
So very funny, ironic. There was a MovNat gym within biking distance of my home. Like
That's
there
so
and it
funny.
is, and I would say MovNat's not very well known here either. Like
Okay.
there's probably per region in the United States, there's maybe like one or two gyms, right? Like it's pretty niche. Not a lot of people
Yeah.
know about it. But I
Okay.
just so happen to be within biking distance of a MovNat gym.
That's so
So
funny.
and I'm a mom, so I have two kids, and I remember during my pregnancies, I kind of started researching MovNat before I even knew there was a MovNat gym in town. Because I was like, what can I do with my family? What can we do together? Like, how can we move like together? And what are some movements that like I could do on the ground while my baby's crawling around and stuff? So I'd kind of had heard of MovNat before. But then, I like a Google search, I'm like, there's a gym within biking distance of my house. Like, well, I gotta go. I gotta go. So I arrived in the gym with shoulder and like a torn shoulder labrum, like chronic like nerve pain down my arms, like almost unable to even grip, all kinds of stuff going on. And met with Rock Hancock, the owner of MovNat Madison. And we just started working together. And he started rehabbing me using MovNat. So a lot of crawling, a lot of closed chain work, and then just strength work, because we pretty quickly realized I had a lot of gaps in my strength. And
Can
I
you
had been,
explain what you mean by closed chain work for listeners?
yes. So ninja is open chain. So you're hanging, right? You're straight overhead with your arms unsupported, hanging in the air. Closed chain is when you're making contact with a surface. So that could be the ground, that could be a wall, it could even be like rowing with a bar or with rings, but you're kind of closing that angle and you're using a support rather than putting all that stress right on the shoulder joints. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So MovNat's such a great fit for closed chain work because of, again, crawling, get ups,
Yeah. It has it
lifting
all.
and carrying. It's
Yeah.
just so thorough and so, again, practical. And I started, where I had seen this disconnect between my movement world and my functional world. I feel like MovNat started like bringing those
Bring
together.
it together.
And
Absolutely.
I loved it. I loved it. And it was what I was looking for. It could integrate into my life. I didn't have to be the mom sitting on the park bench watching my kids play. I now had things I could be practicing. I had, kind of things like benchmarks that I was working towards, and gave my movement some purpose and some direction. And it gave me ideas of how to engage with my kids and with my environment in new ways. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it is great. You're reminding me of a couple that I used to coach. It was online, but they loved MovNat, and they had all the kit. They both had their beams, even in their living room, the things to carry, and basically we just I would tell them what type of obstacle course to
Mm.
make, and I would have the same, and then I would take them through things. And the thing that they both loved it. The thing that I loved the most was that they would then message me and say that their kids would say on Saturday, "I want to do MovNat today,"
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
basically it's like jungle gym, isn't it? It's just,
Yeah.
if you want it to it can be all about obstacle courses and things like that. I don't do a lot of that with my clients because I'm doing basic level groundwork,
Mhm.
really trying to help sort of mobilize them and sort of rehab them from where they have come from and
Mhm.
through life, because they tend to be midlife and older. But
Mhm.
I myself do love
That's
doing
great.
those things. And so
Yeah.
tell me, then you were starting to train with him, he was rehabbing you, and
Mhm.
presumably you saw lots of improvement.
Oh, yeah.
What is your relationship with him now?
Yeah.
How does it work now, if you see what I mean? Are you
Yeah.
still just a gym goer, or is it a lot more?
Yeah. So I started attending classes, and unfortunately, this is also during the pandemic. So a lot of gyms were closed. It's kind of an odd time to engage with fitness. And actually, as a part of the pandemic project, my family built this like obstacle course in our garage called the Shred Shed.
Amazing
So we
place. I
have
have seen it
we
and
have
it's
that.
amazing.
That's when the gyms closed. We like kind of made our own gym, but I started going to MovNat Madison just as a student in the classes. And as time went on, I kind of started developing into more of being mentored by Rock. So meeting with him, shadowing him as he would work with students one on one, watching him teach classes, and then eventually starting to kind of co-facilitate, co-lead classes. So I really got to get some amazing hands-on experience with a MovNat coach, and there's not many of them. So the fact that I got to shadow with really wonderful MovNat coach was a really amazing gift.
And at which point in this process did you find out that you were hypermobile?
Yes. So as I started doing the rehab work with Rock, I was also really going through a little medical journey, trying to figure out like what's going on with my body. Why am I so fatigued? Why am I in so much pain?
Mm.
Why does the pain move around? Like, why isn't it just the injured area? Like,
Yeah.
why is it roaming? So through that discovery process, we found that I was hypermobile, and that also I have chronic Lyme disease. So I manage chronic
Right.
illness as well. Yep, and that can impact soft tissue and joints as well. So
Absolutely.
kind of
So
have
and
two.
chronic fatigue syndrome then? Yeah.
That was just a side effect of
Yes. Of the
the
Lyme.
of the Lyme. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
was that, do you remember that being from a tick bite at some point?
Yeah, as a kid, I was bit by a tick. I had acute Lyme, so we treated it with antibiotics and I had no symptoms. But then I had a series of events happen and the Lyme
Resurfaced.
resurfaced. Yep, after kind of a series of different triggers, I guess you could call it. So
Yeah.
went into a flare after years of remission, and learning how to manage that. I'm hopeful I can remain in remission
Yeah.
the rest of my life, but it's always something I'll kind of manage.
But you're so much more aware of now because it's given you an explanation for the way you were feeling, and
Mhm.
therefore I hope tools to work with it, which
Yeah.
is everything. When you don't know,
Hmm.
then you're in a darker place basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And the silver linings, I'm always really hesitant to say this, especially to chronically ill people or people who are
Mm,
hypermobile who kind of have to manage like an ongoing
yeah.
challenge. It's always hard to be like, oh, the silver lining, the gift of this illness, that can not feel good sometimes. Sometimes you're like, I
Sure.
just don't really want to put a positive spin on this. But to put a positive spin
But
on
it's
it,
about knowing yourself, isn't it?
yes.
It's about knowing yourself and meeting yourself where you're at. And
Yeah.
clearly you've done that incredibly because
Hmm.
of what you're achieving with your body. And so
Hmm.
to for listeners to understand, perhaps there are people out there who are hypermobile and don't know it.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what hypermobility is?
Yeah. So hypermobility is a constellation of traits. So it's not like a disease. It's kind of more like, do you have these traits? So some traits of folks with hypermobility will be, well, first of all, like really flexible joints. So do your elbows hyperextend? Can you bend your pinky or your thumb all the way back? Do your knees pop back? Can you touch the ground flat with your palms? There's kind of these like tests you can do.
Yeah.
But also like really stretchy skin. So like especially on the neck, is your skin really velvety? Is it stretchy? Yep.
Especially when you're getting to nearly
Yeah,
50.
yeah. No, I know too. Yeah. Do you bruise easily? Digestive issues, fatigue. But then, a common one is pain. So
Mm.
joint pain, pelvic floor pain, foot pain, like neck pain, I think is also really common. And it can be kind of tricky to figure out because it is so similar to other,
Yeah.
diseases or illnesses or traits. So thankfully, I was able to work with a physical therapist who specializes in hypermobility. And guess what? The golden ticket is strength.
The golden
Getting
ticket
stronger.
is right.
Strength. That's the golden ticket.
It really is. That's so well said. And from my personal perspective, I really didn't understand that. But I think it's not just strength in the terms of I can lift a lot.
Hmm.
It's very much as you were saying before, it's about functional strength. So it's very
Hmm.
much about how well you're aligned. My pelvis, the reason I got into chronic pain was definitely my hypermobility, then running on it for years, running further and further, enjoying it more and more, getting into more and
Hmm.
more pain.
Yeah.
And there was a salient moment for me where I did a half marathon, was the longest distance.
Mm.
Um, and there was a little bit of video of me coming over the finish line that they send you with your number or whatever when it's tracked. And I remember watching the video, and I knew I was very tired coming over
Hmm.
the line. It was a lot for me. Um, but I looked like a bag of jelly. You
Mm.
see people with great form, and then
Hmm.
I saw me and I was like, whoa, I was
Mm.
really tired. I
Yeah.
didn't realize at that point, it wasn't just that I was really tired. I literally was a bit of a bag of jelly. I
Mm.
wasn't at all well aligned. I wasn't strong in functional patterns. And
Yeah.
obviously, when you then have dysfunction and you run on it and there's huge
Yeah.
impact, it all goes wrong.
Yeah.
And I haven't run
Mm.
since about 6 months later, when then it all went wrong for me. I can run for the bus. I can run. I just won't
Hmm.
run distances.
Yeah.
I may come back to it after I'm postmenopausal,
Hmm.
but because for me, I'm far more likely to flare up or have issues when I am ovulating in the
Hmm.
ovulation section of my cycle or premenstrually.
Yep.
Those are the two times
Same
that
with
I have
me.
to watch that I don't do something that I shouldn't, or if I look back, I sometimes think, okay, that makes sense.
Hmm.
And even 4 years later, I still did something just before Christmas. I know how I did it. I looked at
Hmm.
when I did it,
Yep.
and then it put me in a lot of pain and absolutely twisted my pelvis
Mm.
completely the wrong way and left me with quite a significant flare up, the most significant flare up I've had since my pain, and really scared me. It took me mentally back to some very
Mhm.
dark days. But I'm lucky I now have the tools. I went to see someone.
Mhm.
He helped to realign me. I'm now really working very hard on strengthening right back to basic functional patterns.
Mm.
Um, and the reason that I love natural movement is because it was so similar to the rehab I was doing. The
Mhm.
rehab that worked so well for me, there were so many overlaps. And so I
Mm.
just thought, this makes sense. And this is why it's worked. And knowing that it had worked to recover me meant I knew this would work, like you're saying, for the long
Mm.
term. This would
Yeah.
be something I could keep doing with my kids and hopefully my parents and whatever, but
Yeah.
and keep doing. And so something that you're quite passionate about is working with your cycle, whether you're
Mhm.
hypermobile or not.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yes, I'd love to. So this was a tool that I learned as I was rehabbing, to start, first of all, just paying attention to my menstrual cycle and to talk about it and to educate myself and talk about it, as a community at the gym. And oddly enough, the person who educated me about my menstrual cycle and its impacts on my performance as an athlete was a male coach. It was Rock. And we always laugh about it. I'm like, why did some dude tell me about my period? Like, what? Like, why this should be different? We should have this like be mandatory education.
Yeah.
Um
But
just
that's brilliant that he did. Brilliant.
yeah, and I want to give him a shout out. He's actually developing this wonderful resource called, let me make sure I get the name right. Moving through the feminine seasons. And it's a resource he's putting out there, and I think he's even going to start doing workshops around it about just empowering people with information
Yeah.
and talking about, like menstrual cycle health and fitness, and then perimenopause, menopause, just looking through kind of the whole the feminine seasons and
Yeah.
how it kind of shifts and changes
Absolutely.
approach to movement for each of
Yes.
those phases. Yeah. So,
I think that's great. Can't wait.
yeah.
Because certainly I see things very differently. I'm absolutely in slap bang in perimenopause, and I've had symptoms. I've chosen to take HRT because it's made
Mhm.
me feel a lot better. It's been brilliant for my joints as well, which were
Mhm.
really struggling. But and many other symptoms.
Mhm.
Um, Particularly insomnia, sudden crashing, horrific insomnia,
Mm.
which I just could not have lived with.
Yeah.
And it's not right for everyone, but it certainly has been right for me.
Mhm.
But I also know that I have to be very careful. Not, I'm still cyclical, so I have to be careful
Mm.
from the hypermobility perspective about when I train.
Yes.
But I also know you can really, really exhaust yourself in quite a different way than 10 or 15 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, and it then multiplies. You don't
Mm.
kind of bounce back in the same way. So really pacing and
Mhm.
having variety in the types of movement that I
Mhm.
do is really important. And I hear it from everyone around me.
Yeah.
But also embracing the things that perhaps are um, some slower paced,
Mhm.
and not putting the pressure on yourself so much. And as the messages I talk about a lot as well, that all movement is good movement and encouraging moving, because
Yeah.
you can see that you could start to sort of get restricted.
Mhm.
So that's brilliant that he's doing that. That's fantastic. And
Yeah.
you're a part of that as well.
So he and I developed a program called Move with Your Cycle, and what it is it's a program you can purchase through it's a marketplace platform called Train Heroic, and it is a program that the idea is you sync it up to your menstrual cycle. So if you're in the follicular phase, you are lifting heavy weights, you're doing a lot of lapping and carrying. If you're in the luteal phase, you're doing skill work like vaulting and climbing skills. If you're in the menstrual phase, you're maybe doing a lot of breath work and walking and ground movement. So that's something that we co-developed together, and that is just out there. But
Brilliant. We can link to
yeah.
that in the show notes for
Oh,
sure.
great.
That
Yeah.
could be really useful.
Yeah. And it's actually a really wonderful starting place for people maybe who have been curious about MovNat, but they're not sure where to start because it's just rich with all these fun MovNat movements. And it's varied. So to your point, also as a hypermobile person, I really have to vary my movement. I cannot over specialize. And that's something I learned where I went wrong with Ninja is I was
Right.
over specializing. And so I get actually a lot of like kind of confused looks and questions about my training where people are like, why aren't you training climbing more? Like, don't you want to be a climber? And I'm like, hey, I train once a week. That's good for my body. I'm going to progress slower than someone who's training 4 or 5 times a week. But my joints are happier
Yeah.
when I progress really slow. And same thing with Ninja. I take a really long off season. So I try to take like a 9 month off season. And then when I'm in my competition season, I just kind of suck it up and I'm honestly in pain during my season.
Right. Which is so
Yeah.
telling. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of professional athletes suffer the same
Hmm.
because there is no choice when you're on that
Yeah.
sort of treadmill.
Hmm.
And while the goal of achieving competitions and so on is important, then
Hmm.
that's okay as long as you're really aware
Yeah.
um, how much you need to then nurture the rest of the time.
Hmm.
And obviously you work really hard to protect your body from
Hmm.
injury. So
Yeah.
and I'm sure if anything happened, you would respond straight away.
Yeah.
And so given that it's only like a 3 month period then for
Hmm.
the ninja training, is that all locally or do you go around the country?
Yeah. So I generally I stay in my region. But I'm hoping this year to make it to finals,
Right.
national finals, where I'll
So it's
travel out.
levels.
Yes, I'll travel out to, I think this year it's in LA. So I
Wow.
would fly out there. So we'll see. That's in July. So yeah.
No, it's absolutely fantastic. And I love the fact that you're mixing lots of different ways of moving in your life. So you're training people, you're embracing MovNat,
Mhm.
you're also showing them that with the skill and the strength, you can be a ninja if you want
Mhm.
to be. And you're a great example to your kids. And let's talk about the parkour for seniors because obviously
Yeah.
they're also seeing that and you're passing on some skills and tricks. So
Yeah.
what are the type of people that come to you? Who's interested? Is
Mhm.
it people who are already quite adventurous and
Mm.
quite mobile, or do you get people who are less so?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the class that I co-teach is called Parkour for Seniors, and it's a parkour class for folks over the age of 50. Generally, the people that come to the class are going to be the adventurous people.
Right.
People who, they're going through the catalog of the 50 plus fitness and they're like, ooh, what's that one? Looks weird. I'm going to do it. Um, so usually it's kind of self-selecting and people who want to train outside. Some folks don't.
Yeah.
So um, this session, we actually have a beginners class that we've just added. So we've kind of divided it into intermediate and beginners. And beginners are people who are more hesitant or
Yeah.
less sure of like, is this for me? And that we're actually kind of hoping to grow more beginners because we actually feel like this modality isn't just for the adventurers. It's
I would
for
agree. I think
folks
it's
who are
more
sedentary and
exactly.
deconditioned.
It's more powerful at that
Mhm.
end of the spectrum because you can make bigger change, presumably,
Yes, yeah,
increasing
and
people's confidence.
mhm,
Obviously, all their natural skills they need of balance and strength and so on, all the
mm,
obvious ones, but
yeah,
more just getting people who are less likely to do something. So yeah, that's
mhm,
harder to target as well. It's harder to
yeah,
convince people. Again, word
yeah.
of mouth being great there.
Yeah. Yeah, and so our hopes is we actually would love to if we can go into, like, retirement communities and hold classes there. Because the nice thing about this class is you don't necessarily need a lot of equipment. So when you think of parkour, maybe you think of like a specialty gym, or maybe you think of like a cool park with like all these benches and stuff. Really, all you need is like some chairs, maybe some tape to like put a line on the floor,
Yeah.
and tennis balls and some creativity. That's really
Yeah.
all you need. Because a lot of what we do is tissue
Right.
preparation. So,
Right.
getting people to lift their heel off the ground, to put weight into the ball of their foot, getting
Hmm.
people to find a strong squat position,
Hmm.
and then a lot of preparing the hand as well.
Yeah.
So if you think about like fall prevention and falling, if you
Impact.
fall, you're probably gonna, catch yourself with your hand first. So if you tent your fingers, you're gonna maybe damage a ligament, or you're gonna hurt your wrist. So we teach people how to like absorb
and
force through the
and
hand.
you will often see older people with that sort of wrist cover, because
Mhm.
from falls, it's the first thing that takes the
Yeah.
impact, isn't it? And often
Yeah.
when people don't concertina nicely through their body because they're not relaxed, or they're
Hmm.
falling almost from a greater height,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
take the hit through the wrist. And yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's one of the most common injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we even do like break falls in our class. So we just straight up teach people how to
Yeah.
fall, and then we practice falling.
Yeah.
Because I think so many people have just so much fear around
Fear.
falling.
Yeah.
So once you practice it a few times, you're like, "Oh, I protected my head," or like, "Oh, I didn't hurt myself." Like that went okay. It's empowering to practice
It's
falling, which sounds counterintuitive.
not, I totally, in fact, I was doing it in my class on Wednesday with my
Great.
online clients, and you can do it to whatever level you want. So you
Mhm.
can allow a little fall where you're just taking a little bit of impact through your wrist. You can go one way, the other way. And the point is to try
Mhm.
always, but it's more, as you say, it's more about the sort of allowing a little bit of falling that makes
Mhm.
you think, oh, that's not so bad. And I
Mhm.
also, when I teach rocking, I'm always talking about keeping the
Mm.
head in, not just to make it a smoother ride through your spine, but
Mhm.
also so that if you fall in this way, you
Yeah.
hopefully have that automatic pattern where you pull the
Mhm.
head in, you protect your head
Mhm.
from bashing against the ground.
Oh, yeah, it's
Um,
so good.
and it's all that practicality, isn't it? Again, it's that
Yeah.
those these movements. So it's not just for functionality; it's for safety
Mhm.
as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so useful. I'd love to see more of your parkour for seniors. So please
Yeah.
video more and post it so that we can see, because
We
I would. It's something I would really love to do myself,
yeah,
especially
we
now that I am nearly a senior.
yeah, we will be sharing, and I will say, so the curriculum that we're using is based largely on a curriculum called PK Silver. So PK is a way to shorten the word parkour. So PK Silver was developed by a group called PK Move, and they were offering trainings that you could take and be certified as an instructor. So that curriculum is out there. There's lots of beautiful
Oh,
videos out there. If you look up
okay.
PK Move, you can find all those resources. It's really good.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, I'm gonna definitely get that from you. If
Yeah.
I don't remember, that's fantastic. Well, it's been lovely talking to you. I would like to sort of get a couple of pearls of wisdom
Mhm.
before you go. One about people who realize they're hypermobile,
Mhm.
and um, not sure where they start with
Mm.
strength training. So a little bit of
Mhm.
advice for them. And then another one about seniors. So let's
Mhm.
say, in your terms, 50 plus,
Yeah.
um, and sort of some words of encouragement for them to try something like parkour for seniors, or
Mm.
something that is slightly out their comfort zone. So starting
Yeah.
with people with hypermobility.
Sure. Yeah. So I'd say with people with hypermobility, the first thing maybe to let go of is doing movement that looks like a sport for a time. So to let go of like movement has to be ultimate frisbee, or it has to be, for me, ninja. Like I was like, oh, to get strong I have to go do a modality or a thing. What my body really needed was honestly like things that looked a little bit more like physical therapy, or maybe a little bit more like rehab, just for a time, as I reconnected kind of my connection with my body and my trust, as I worked through like fear of injury and stuff like that. And I would really honestly recommend working one on one with someone.
Yeah.
either a trainer or a physical therapist, just to get started.
Yeah.
Just to kind of have some outside person on your team as you kind of make those connections again. Um, and then the next thing is, after you've established that trust and you can kind of sense what's going on in your body,
Mhm.
don't be afraid to go move. So it's walking a fine line between being foolhardy and maybe overdoing it, and being so fearful you don't ever pursue anything because you're afraid of getting hurt. So finding that balance point, right? And then maybe pushing the edge gently
Yeah.
until you're able to grow in strength. And honestly, as strength comes, I think confidence comes. As a hypermobile person, you're like, I've put in the work to stabilize my shoulders. I know I can go do this high level ninja move, like, for example, or I can
Or
jump down from this box, whatever it
yes,
is.
or exactly, or for me, um I climbed a tree again, and I
Wonderful.
hadn't done it since I was really young, but I felt the confidence in my body that I probably was going to be okay. And I could then jump off the bottom branch, albeit quite low, but
Hmm.
I can do those things,
Yeah.
which are pushing me slightly and enough for me, but I feel the confidence that my body's not going to
Mm.
fall apart and I'm not going to
Yep.
have a huge flare up. And I
Yeah.
do think you're absolutely right that confidence is kind of everything with
Mhm.
movement. And when we fear it, it restricts us in far more ways than our body is actually. We can be hugely more capable, even when we're
Mhm.
hypermobile.
Yeah.
Um, but you're so right that it's got to be bit by bit. And I think people have a problem often with the level of consistency and the amount of time you need to put in. And
Mhm.
certainly from my perspective, my rehab felt very
Mhm.
boring, very slow, and I felt like a bit of a fraud. I did it at a
Mm.
gym, and I wanted to have a T-shirt that said, "Don't judge me, I'm in rehab." Because before,
Yeah.
I'd been like on the running machine, which I hated, but I still did it, and I
Mhm.
was in a spin class and all of this stuff,
Mhm.
which I didn't actually really enjoy, but I was doing it
Yeah.
because I had to be doing it. But
Mhm.
the rehab, it was a very grounding experience, and
Yeah.
so these things take time, is what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's hard to, when you've been an athlete, so in your case a runner, my case a ninja athlete, high level ninja athlete, and then all of a sudden you're at the gym with like a resistance band
Mhm.
and you see
Yes.
all the cool stuff you used to be able to do. And
Yeah.
I think mentally it's so easy to be like, I'm just never going to get back to that. I'm washed up. It's over. But just to like share my story, every single athletic accomplishment, the greatest accomplishments I've ever had have been on the other side of injury, pregnancy, and diagnosis. Every single incredible thing I've accomplished has been on the other side of the three greatest setbacks I faced as an adult. And so that's just to say sometimes slow and steady works. And sometimes as you gain confidence and strength, your capability does expand.
That's
And
so you put that so brilliantly. It's so empowering and inspiring for people to hear that. Really
yeah,
is.
yeah, because I think so many women dread pregnancy because, oh, it's going to ruin my body. And I'm like, I'm stronger than I've ever been. And postpartum is hard. And I'm still postpartum. I'm still doing all this work to recover and re-strengthen. I'm not saying it isn't hard, but it's not the end.
Yeah.
And it's not, we can be so much more positive with our framing. And I think if we keep hope alive, like we can uh, give a purpose to the work that needs to be done. If we don't have hope, we're not going to do the work,
Yeah.
But if we have like, well, maybe this what does this make possible? Um, then we can keep going and we can keep finding what we can do and find a new way. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And for seniors then, so
Oh yes.
you know,
So if someone is like hesitant to try this, is that kind of what you want me to speak to?
yeah.
Well, it's same kind of idea, right?
How do you
Like,
nudge people over the line?
Um, so here's the thought. When we come into this world as a kid, we're here and it's kind of like this great big circle. And I've just noticed that we kind of return to this playfulness. We return to a youthfulness as we age. People just seem more open and more willing to try things. Not everyone, but I've just noticed kind of this openness and willingness. So I encourage you to be open, be curious.
To find your inner openness and willingness, yes.
And even maybe find that inner child again. Be willing to play and find joy. And that might mean surprising yourself with opportunities and movement. Being in your environment in a different way, seeing a chair, and instead of being like, I'm just going to sit in that chair, be like, I'm going to do a little turn vault on that chair. Like, what can you do? How can you use your stairs in a new way? Like, we call it parkour vision. It just kind of opens up your world in a new way. So it's an invitation to just put a new layer of curiosity on life.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And curiosity is everything. And if you are curious, it means you're open. Then you'll find new things, the opportunities you will spot, because you'll suddenly realize they are actually opportunities where before they might have passed you by because you didn't quite notice, because you're open to it. And openness and curiosity is everything. Yeah. Which you certainly are. I can see. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much for the time.
Yeah. Thanks, Wendy.
I always love hearing my guests' movement stories or learning from them about topics they're passionate about. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.